All right, so let's jump into a deep dive into something that I think can really help all of us elevate our technical writing game.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
We're going to be talking about the work of Dr. JoAnn Hackos, a real pioneer in the field of technical writing. And, our listeners have sent in some articles about her.
Yeah.
And one that really caught my eye was by Curt Robbins.
Robbins, oh, he's got a great background.
Yeah.
I mean, he's worked with companies like Microsoft and FedEx.
Exactly. One of the things that Robbins emphasizes is how Dr. Hackos really brought this sense of discipline and structure to technical writing.
Okay.
It wasn't just, winging it anymore.
Right.
It was like she transformed it into this really methodical system for content development, information management, all of that.
Yeah, for our listeners out there, if you're working with technology, and it's probably pretty complex technology,
Yeah.
having a structured approach to your documentation can make such a difference.
Absolutely.
Both for you and the people who rely on your documentation, right?
It's got to be accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
And Robbins really highlights one of Hackos's key principles.
Yeah.
And that's the importance of user-focused documentation.
Okay.
So it's not just about spitting out instructions.
Right.
It's about really taking the time to understand the needs of your audience.
Yeah.
And then crafting content that actually supports them and helps them achieve their goals.
So it's like thinking about the user experience from the very beginning.
Exactly.
And making sure that the documentation is truly helpful and easy to use.
Absolutely. And that's where I think Hackos' advocacy for structured authoring comes into play.
Structured authoring. Now that sounds kind of maybe a little intimidating to some people.
Yeah, I could
But
see.
it's honestly a game changer, especially when you're dealing with large documentation projects.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you're working on big stuff.
Yeah. So think about it this way. Instead of writing one massive document, you're breaking it down into smaller, reusable chunks, kind of like building blocks.
So it's more modular.
Exactly.
So you're not constantly reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. And this makes updating information so much easier.
Right.
And it also makes translation much smoother if you need to do that. And it just ensures more consistency across all of your documentation.
That makes a lot of sense.
Now, Hackos was a big proponent of something called DITA.
DIT.
Have you heard of that?
I have.
It stands for the Darwin Information Typing Architecture.
Okay.
It's essentially a framework for structured authoring.
So it gives you that structure that we've been talking about.
It helps you create content that's flexible and efficient, and it's really a game changer for anyone working in technical documentation.
I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, and I see Managing Your Documentation Projects
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
by Dr. Hackos.
It's a must-read for anyone in this field.
Is it like having a project manager in your pocket?
It really is.
Okay, so she's got the practical advice there.
She covers everything from planning and budgeting to actually executing those documentation projects.
So it's practical tips.
Yeah, one thing that really stuck with me from that book
Yeah.
was her emphasis on creating a really detailed documentation plan before you even start writing.
Okay, so that upfront planning.
It seems obvious, right?
Right.
But I know back in the day, I used to just jump right into writing, and I'd inevitably hit these roadblocks along the way.
You'd get stuck.
Yeah, exactly. But having a solid plan from the get-go makes the whole process so much smoother.
I can see that.
It's like having a roadmap for your project.
And it helps you stay on track,
Exactly.
especially when you've got tight deadlines and you're working with complex material.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm also thinking about our listeners who are grappling with, this constantly changing digital landscape.
Oh, for sure.
And Dr. Hackos also wrote a book called Content Management for Dynamic Web Delivery.
Oh, yeah, that one's all about navigating the world of content management systems and creating these really dynamic, user-driven documentation experiences.
So we're not just talking about static manuals anymore.
No, not at all.
It's got to be interactive,
Exactly. Users expect content that's searchable.
that they can access on any device.
Precisely. It's all about creating an engaging online experience for your users.
So they can find the information they need quickly and easily.
Right, because nobody wants to wade through a huge, clunky manual anymore.
No, nobody has time for that.
And then there's Information Development, one of her other books.
Okay.
Now, this one is really insightful for anyone who wants to move into a leadership role in technical writing.
So it's for people who want to go beyond just writing.
Exactly. It dives deep into how to effectively lead documentation teams.
And how to align content strategy with the bigger picture of the organization.
Right, because documentation isn't just an afterthought. It needs to be integrated into the overall strategy of the company.
That's a really good point.
And, Hackos' impact goes way beyond just her books.
Oh, yeah.
She was such a strong advocate for this field, for elevating technical writing to a respected profession.
She wanted people to see it as the profession that it is,
It does.
not just something people do on the side.
Right.
And she was deeply involved in organizations like the Society for Technical Communication, shaping industry standards and best practices.
And it's not just about efficiency, it's about empowering technical writers to be more strategic in their thinking.
To see how documentation fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly, to see it as a crucial part of the user experience.
And I think that's such a critical point because in today's world, where technology is everywhere,
Right, it's inescapable.
good documentation can literally make or break a product.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the bridge between all this complex technology and the people who need to use it effectively.
And that bridge is only becoming more important as technology keeps evolving at such a rapid pace.
Yeah, because if people can't understand how to use something, they're not going to use it.
Exactly, and that's where good documentation comes in.
But Hackos' legacy goes beyond just specific techniques or technologies.
Okay, I see that.
It's about adopting a certain mindset.
A way of approaching technical communication in a thoughtful and strategic way. And always striving for clarity and accessibility.
Those are the key things.
And that's what will really set you apart as a technical writer, whether you're creating traditional manuals, online help, or even exploring some of these new AI-powered documentation tools.
Because the principles she championed are timeless.
You really are.
They apply no matter what new technologies come along in the future.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners out there, if you're feeling overwhelmed by a huge documentation project,
I've been there.
or if you're just looking to level up your technical writing skills in general.
Hackos' work can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
Her books and articles offer practical advice, strategic insights,
And a framework for approaching documentation with that user-centric mindset that we've been talking about.
It's fascinating to think about how Hackos' work, it provides a framework for thinking about documentation in a way that can adapt to these new technologies.
Oh, for sure. And I'm thinking specifically about AI.
AI, right?
It's changing the landscape of so many fields.
Yeah.
And I don't think technical writing is any exception.
No, not at all.
I mean, imagine AI tools that can analyze user behavior,
Okay, yeah.
and then they can personalize the documentation based on the user's needs, or like chatbots that can guide users through troubleshooting steps. So for our listeners, I think the key takeaway here is that learning from Hackos isn't just about mastering a set of techniques.
It's bigger than that.
It's about adopting a mindset,
A way of thinking.
a way of thinking about documentation as a crucial part of the user experience.
And always looking for ways to improve that experience, to make it better for the user.
And I think that mindset is what will really set you apart as a technical writer. No matter what tools or technologies you're using.
Yeah, the tools will change.
Right, they come and go.
But those principles, they remain constant.
So, to our listeners out there, as you continue on your journey as technical writers,
Remember Hackos' principles.
embrace innovation, prioritize the user,
And never stop learning.
because just like Dr. JoAnn Hackos showed us, there's always room for growth, for improvement.
Hackos' work, it's just a treasure trove of knowledge.
It is.
And whether you're just starting out in your career
Yeah.
or you've been doing this for years,
You're a seasoned pro.
Hackos' books and articles, they can give you so much guidance.
I think so too. And speaking of articles, we should mention again that article by Curt Robbins.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
He did a fantastic job.
He really summarized Hackos' core principles in such a clear and concise way.
And he gave some really practical applications too.
And, I think if you combine Robbins' insights with Hackos' own work,
Yeah.
it can really transform the way you approach documentation.
Make it more efficient, more user-focused,
Impactful overall.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the legacy of Dr. JoAnn Hackos, it's been a great discussion, and thanks for joining me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I always enjoy talking about Hackos and her amazing work.
To our listeners, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.